everybody, it's me, Laura, and today we're going to be doing the castle on the hill. I know this is one of my picture board projects and I love this thing. So right away I'm bringing in a frame, and this frame is 7 3/4 by 10 inches. Now that's the full frame with the, the black around the metal frame around it. If you're taking just the whiteboard, it's 7 by 9.5. And the clay piece alone is 5 1/4 by 7 3/4. So if you wanted to get the full dimensions, and this is an odd board, I get a lot of my boards from the thrift stores, wherever I can find these frames, and it works out great. Anyways, I'm bringing in a piece of my mud clay. I know it looks very green. Well, it's like I don't really have a purpose for it. So if you have clay that you're like, I don't know what to do with this, use it up in a mud fashion, and this is a great way of doing it. What I'm doing is I'm trying to take this particular piece of green, which has been rolled out on a number 3 setting on my Atlas pasta machine, and that might be a little bit thick, but that's because everything's going to be going on top of that. Once I have that conformed to the board though, I'm bringing in a Skinner blend of this blue, pink, and yellow. I've had this sitting around for a while, and I thought I want to extend this out because I really think this is a nice blend. So I brought in some extra blue, and I thought, it's just another blue or a lighter blue, if you will, and then some pink, and then some lighter yellow, and then I had also a little bit of a darker yellow. I wanted to throw that in. And we're going to roll this through my pasta machine, and we're going to extend out this particular blend. Now, if you have a blend like this just lying around, there's just a little bit of it, do this, because you'll wind up like, oh my goodness, it turned out so great. And now I have more of it. It's like, yay! And that's kind of what happened here. I mean, I had a really nice little bit of blue left and that pink yellow, and I thought, let's extend it out. And then I got more and more of this, where to me it even turned into a prettier blend than the one I had originally. So if you're wondering about, okay, I extend out my blends, yeah, this is the way I do it, because you need to be able to take, if you have like a small amount of a beautiful blend that you've got and there's no real purpose to it, what better way than to take something that's just sitting off to the side and extend it out so it can have a better purpose because you have more of it. So yeah, bring in your blue, your pink, your yellow, all of that to kind of make even a prettier blend and something that will be useful so that we can extend that across our board here. So right here I've thinned out this clay then to about a number 4 or number 5 setting. You can get it fairly thin and it's not going to change anything because you got that nice mud base, if you will, underneath it. And then I'm conforming this to the frame with my finger, and then eventually I'll bring in my blade and I'll cut it to the mud base and take off the extra. All right, now that we've got that Skinner blend kind of sky all put together, I'm going to measure this thing from the top down. It's going to be about 4 inches in height and 5 1/4 inches in width. So once I have that, I'm bringing in some brown here, and this brown has been rolled out again on probably a 4 or 5 setting. I try to go thinner instead of thicker. It just makes things a lot easier. And I'm cutting just a little bit of a, you might say, a skyline or a mountain type, maybe not mountain, but like a rolling hill kind of little thing. And then I'm going to place this right over the very bottom edge of where the yellow is. I don't want to take out I like my yellow because it gives me that sense of like it's going to be a sunset sort of thing. And then I'm going to cut this brown and conform it to my board. Okay, now I'm going to set that board aside and we're going to create our castle. And I'm excited about this, right? So I've got about 1 1/4 inches of a ball here. You could have more or less depending upon, you're going to be cutting this down. Let's keep that in mind. This is going to get cut down a lot or it might not, depending upon the size of board. What I'm giving you here is a generalization. Yes, I used a fairly small board, but let's say you want to do a larger picture. Well, your dimensions are going to change then. But you can do this sort of picture piece in a larger piece if you really want to. It might be a little bit harder to do, but it is possible. Anyway, we're going to come right in here. I brought in a texture sheet of this brick pattern. I will try to find one online. I have not looked in this regard, but I'm going to put that link in the description box when and if I find it. Hopefully I do. But there are texture sheets out there, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find one with a brick pattern. Right here, as you can tell, I'm cutting this thing down, and I had pushed that green clay onto my surface. I want it to be fairly flat, but a little bit raised, right? And then I've got about 2 inches by about 2 inches of this piece. Once I have that, I'm going to bring in my needle tool, and here's the thing with me. I like texture sheets, but sometimes they don't always give to me the best of impression. I like a little bit of a deeper impression. So I like to go over with my needle tool where I can, especially on a pattern like this. And I thought I wanted something a little bit more indented, a little bit more lifelike. And that's why I'm bringing it from the edge. You see, I kind of nudged the needle into the side of the clay. Well, that's to give it a more realistic look of like, oh, this is brick that's wrapping around, and you could see the stone as it wraps around into this real-like wall, instead of just a flat piece that just like, okay, I've got the pattern on top. Yeah, you need to give it a little bit more of a true realistic kind of feel if you can. Anyway, right here, I'm doing that also with the top part, and the more I started doing this, more I'm like, guess what? This thing is pretty wide. How am I going to use this, right? So I decided to bring in my blade and cut it in half. I just thought, yeah, we need to separate this out, because I actually wanted like 2 little separate, towers, if you will, on the side of the castle. This would be the perfect way to do it. And again, when you do that, you're going to have to come in with that needle tool and make that more realistic indent on the sides. And then you're going to go through and cut a little bit of that section, because I forgot to do that. I thought I got to cut that because I want that one brick on top to stand out, right? To do so, you just cut away just a little bit from that top row, and you've got then a little bit of a tower kind of look for your one side, and then do the same with the other. Now, once I started indenting on the top, I decided I need to go back through the entire pattern and use my needle tool to go ahead and indent in more, giving it more of a realistic look. If you don't want to have to do that, you don't have to, but to me, it just, instead of it making it look like, okay, you had a tool and you just kind of pressed it down on there, no, make it look a little bit more individual, right? And that's what I did here using my needle. Now, once I got both of my side towers all indented in, I'm bringing in some more of that greenish, or I should say mud clay, and it's about, 1 3 inches, it's 1 3/4 of an inch long, and I'm flattening it down again, and this time I'm again bringing in that texture plate, spraying it with my water, and we're going to create that texture once more. I wanted to put something between my 2 towers, just kind of like a castle would be, right? So I'm creating that brick pattern again. I'm going to cut out a piece of this brick pattern so it's nice and flush on top, nice, level area, and then do the same on the bottom and then on the sides. Now, the more I started putting this together, especially from the sides, it was kind of big. Or at least in my mind, it was a little bit big. And I had to kind of look at this thing, and I thought, do I need to cut it down some more? Because it was really wide. I was like, that's really wide. I'm like, whoa, okay. So once I was like, there we go. Bring your towers in to kind of, okay, I need to take off a portion of that end, get it to conform down to where you like it in the size. I want to be able to bring my littler towers in. So then I cut that portion off, or at least the 2 sides off, to where I really like it. This is where you're going to have to use a little bit of your own judgment and say, do I like the look of that? Yeah, let's go ahead and go with that shorter little version. So that's what I did here. I then bring in my needle tool, again, making it trying to make it look a little bit more realistic by making more of an indent on the sides and throughout the whole thing like it's a real brick wall. Now, as I was looking at this particular brick wall and I put the two towers up against it, I thought, no, they're too tall. They didn't look right to my eye because these are the side towers. They're not the main feature of it, right? Of our castle. Our main feature is going to be in the center. So I brought them down to a level where I thought, yeah, I like the look of that. And they stick up a little bit, but not too far, right? I just thought it just looked too out of place. They were just too tall for the whole overall thing. And then I'm bringing in my Exacto knife and I'm cutting out a center, you might say rectangular area here. This is where you want your door, right? And I couldn't figure out any other way to do this. Maybe you've got a cutter that's a little bit more narrow and a rectangular kind of thing. You could just punch right down. But if you don't, bring in your Exacto knife and cut out your little door. In the meantime, when I did that, then I'd come back in with my needle and create more of that brick wall so it looks a little more realistic as I go through creating my castle. Now, as I'm creating this castle, I decided I need to bring in one more smaller tower, if you will, for the center. Take the larger piece off, take it off your tile, bring it to the side, bring in some more of that green clay, bring in your texture plate of your brick, spray it, make that little brick wall one more time, and then you're going to cut out a smaller tower in the center. And again, as you're trying to create the center tower, it's truly up to you as to if you like the look of it or not. I wanted to go with a little bit of a more narrow tower, a little bit more of a distinction between my two side towers and the center one, in the regard that the center one is going to be way smaller. It's just a smaller, narrower tower. It's supposed to be right in the center, kind of my highlight to my castle. And you can tell there, it's very tiny. It's like an inch tall by like close to an inch or even less when it comes to this one. Anyway, I'm going to make those little indents with my needle tool, and then I'm going to bring in some more green clay or mud clay, and then I'm going to create a small ball. So this ball is going to be, I don't know, maybe ½ inch to an inch. But you're going to create a teardrop and then kind of create a nice little level base on this. It's just a teardrop forming turret. That's what it's going to be on my center part of my little tower here. And this thing, just get it to conform into a nice little teardrop. But the more I started putting it together, it's like, no, this is like a little Hershey's kiss. I was like, yes, a little Hershey kiss right on top, right? Perfect. Sounds great. Once I had my little turret or Hershey kiss on the top of that tower, I brought in my Kemper oval cutters and decided to create two side windows on the two side towers. I then decided instead of oval, I wanted a circle, so I went and got my circle Kemper cutters and created a circle window in the center tower. Now, if you like your windows just like this, don't do anything more. But for me, I wanted to alter it just slightly. And so I brought in a little tiny, I want to say about 1/8 of an inch little dollop of clay, made a little bit of a cylinder there, and I placed one in each side tower. And the reason for this is because I wanted more of a flat little look on this window. I wanted to be more of a moon shape than a circle shape. And to me, this is the best way to get it. I mean, I had to doctor it slightly. I had to flatten it out with my Exacto knife. I had to bring in my Burnisher, burnish in so that it didn't look like it had been cut out, and form up my line a little bit more. But to me, it was worth it. It was like, okay, I can do this. This is cool, right? Because I don't have a half moon shape to really work with that small. So you just alter it just slightly by adding a little bit more clay in and reforming to create your side windows. Once I had my windows all taken care of, I'm going to bring in my needle tool once more, and I'm going to create a nice little line through our center turret there on our center tower. When I have that done, I'm going to take that a needle, or I should say a knitting needle, and I'm going to poke holes down into the center part of the two side towers and on the turret in the center. Once you have this done though, you're going to go ahead and take this entire piece and bake it in your oven at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes. Again, you probably will be making this a little bit of a longer bake time. I usually go, especially on this because it is thicker, it'll probably be more like 15. But right here, it's completely baked through. Look also for your area, what kind of climate you have, altitude. It's going to make a difference on your baking time. Anyway, coming back to this has been baked, and I'm bringing in my liquid clay and my super glue, and we have some fresh black clay that's been rolled out on a number 6 setting through my Atlas pasta machine. It doesn't have to be terribly thick. It can be fairly thin, and that's fine. All we want is the black to back this entire piece. So this way then it's all gathered up, and with the liquid clay and a little bit of super glue, it'll hold right in there nicely. I'm going to take my needle tool, I'm going to trace this out, and then I'm going to rebake the entire piece. At this point, the castle has been baked, and I took some like silver and gold and some white and twisted it up together and made 2 tinier little snakes, and I'm going to create a third one. And this way then this is going to be put into the little holes at the top of our little towers, and we'll place a little flag on each. Anyways, I'm setting that off to the side. I'm going to let that bake. I'm going to bring in some black clay. We're going to paint up the entire castle in my black. Once I got that thoroughly painted, I'll bring in some of my shimmering silver and paint over the bricks with that. And I use my finger because I figure why not. And I like to scuff it a little bit because then it looks like it's been weathered just slightly. So it looks like weathered brick, and that's kind of what I'm shooting for. Now, if you want to, you can also bring in a little tiny paintbrush, make some little detail, especially on the sides, because I'm just doing the top here. And if I go ahead and use a little bit of a detail brush, that's going to look really nice, just kind of covering up areas or even making them a little bit brighter where you want them to be brighter. Once I have my silver finished up, I'm bringing in my green flash, my orchid flash, and my pastel blue in my color shifts. And this is going to help quite a bit in painting up on my turret. Now that we've got our castle mainly finished up for the most part, I'm going to place him into our picture where I think I like it. And notice here I placed it kind of over that flattened area where I had my ground, and that was intentional because I wanted it kind of that castle on the hill. So I've placed him into my picture. I've brought into my my little striped poles, if you will, and those have been thoroughly baked. And then I'm bringing in some silver clay, and we're going to create a, you might say, a leaf type piece. This thing is about 1/4 of an inch in diameter, and then punching, or I should say pressing down with my fingers, creating a leaf-like form. I'm going to bring in my blade, I'm going to cut it in half and create these into 2 small little flags. I thought we could have little flags for our poles, and so that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to do it again. I'll create a third one, and that'll be my center one. I'll place these up against our little poles, and I like to use a little bit of, since it's clay and clay, I thought I'd bring in some of my liquid clay and attach those in, and then I also bring a tiny black ball in and place that over the top of each of those poles, and then punch down with a little knitting needle to create an indent so we can put a small rhinestone in each flag. Now once you have that done, you're going to take these little flags, you're going to rebake these again 10 to 15 minutes, make sure they're thoroughly baked, and then let them cool off to the side. At this point, when I was looking at my picture, I thought I needed a feature off to the side and more in the foreground. So I'm going to create a tree. Now, this is a lot of gold, bronze, and copper all together. You don't have to have this much, okay? I started out with it was like 1.5 inch ball on each color. I didn't need this much. So go with a smaller amount, okay? But you're going to twist them all up together, and what you're doing is you're creating part of what our tree is going to be. I found that the more I started twisting it up, this is so big, I was like, is that going to look right on the thing? I was like going, no, it's too much. So when I went and placed it onto my picture, again, this is going to be a judgment call. See how big that is? Yeah, that's way too much and way too big. So what you're going to do is you're going to come in with some brown clay, and this clay, I was a fairly big wad of it, and then I'm pushing it down on the surface. It's a large teardrop, and I'm angling it up, kind of weaving, if you will, just a little bit, kind of like a tree would naturally do. And then I'm creating a little bit of a point down there at the bottom as well. And you can extend this out more on the other end. I didn't. I wanted to show a little bit of the roots and the top of the tree. So right here, I'm bringing in some more of that, that gold and that copper and that bronze. I had twisted all up. We're going to put this into the tree, but it's not going to be the main trunk like I had just placed that down onto the picture piece. We're going to take part of this, and again, I had so much, I had to cut it in half. I had to cut parts of it off. You're going to twist it up more. You're going to make a smaller amount of this, and you're going to place this into the larger picture and into your tree. So from here, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to let you guys watch my hands talk as I put more and more of my tree, its root system, and its branches together. Now that I have most of my tree together, I decided, I needed a little bit more in that background. So I brought in some of my black clay. This has been rolled out on a number 5 setting on my Atlas pasta machine. I'm again creating a little bit of a hill kind of look, and we're going to place that right up against our tree. So we're going to conform it. I'll use my Exacto knife, make sure it's kind of cut just to the tree, and you might have to use your burnisher a little bit to make sure it conforms. or even your scissors. It just really depends upon what cutting tools you have available to you. And then place that background right around the root system and everything else. Now, if I was smart, which I wasn't, you could do this portion first, lay that black down first, but I didn't know I was going to actually do that. This is kind of like, okay, we'll just see what happens, right? So really, the best way to do it, put down your brown, then create a black, and then put that down, and then create your tree system, right? Anyway, from here you could tell I'm bringing in my needle tool, and if you get caught in this sort of thing, this might be a way for you to go ahead and, oh, this is what she did when she ran into trouble. Yeah, this is what I did to make sure it would look right. So again, I brought in my black, and then I'll put another piece of black on the other side. Now, once I have the black put in, I'm also then going to come in with another little bit more of my brown, my little brown twisty stuff, and I'm going to place another branch or so on that very far left side. And once I have that branch kind of put in, I'm going to bring in some of my silver, my gray clays. And I have different variations. So I have like a light, a medium, and a dark kind of silver. And I'm going to start creating and forming, as I would put it, little rocks or pebbles in my hands, just nudge it here and there and create some of those forms and place that down onto the bottom part of my picture. Okay, so the more I was looking at this picture, I thought, I need a road, okay? Because you just got this castle in the background, you got no way to connect it up to your foreground. So I brought in some of my dark gray clay, and I made this angled like piece that was, kind of a little bit of a triangle, but not really. And I'm creating this little tiny road that's going to go right up over my little black hills here. And then I'm going to cut off that little notch. It'll just conform right to it. And then I decided, guess what? We need to have a little bit of a road going up to the castle too. So I created another piece. It was a little bit wider because my door was a little wider on the castle part, but I thought, let's go ahead and make a nice little road going up to the castle too. I wanted to connect in my foreground to my background. I thought this would be the best way to do so. Now, when I was placing this little road down, it was so tiny, right? And I got a lot of extra here. I created a little bit of a hump, if you will. So this is a little bit more three-dimensional, and that's what I want. Not everything in your picture pieces has to be a two-dimensional piece. I see a lot of that, even with the jewelry. Everything is flat, two-dimensional. This way, it's like, yeah, I've got a little bit of a bridge underneath or a little bit of a hump, but it goes down under. And then the thing is, I have that opening right underneath there. We're going to take some more of that silver clay, the dark, the medium, and the light, and we'll create a nice little rock formation right around the base of the castle. It'll tie it right in and right under our road. All right, so we have to go back to our tree because we need leaves, right? So I'm bringing in some green clay I have here, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bunch of different little balls. I'll flatten them out between my finger and my index finger, I should say my thumb and my index finger, and then pinch a point, use your needle tool to drag up a line through the center, and then place that down into my tree. So right here, just understand this entire picture has yet to be baked. So it's not baked yet. It's still all fairly fresh clay with the exception of our castle. You'll also notice here that I have the flags in on the top part of the castle. Well, they're not glued in yet, and I'm going to remove those because the more I started working on the tree, the more I realized, okay, I got a lot of little leaves here I got to put in, and eventually, I'm going to fill up the entire tree with a bunch of different leaves, but I also go in and I start adding green wire. And my green wire is actually 22 gauge green wire. I'm cutting off sections of it. I want to say about 2 inches to 2.5 inches long, and then I start sticking them into the tree. So just randomly placing them all over the place and deep into the piece because we got some fresh clay there. I might as well go ahead and use the background piece also as a really nice anchor. Once I have all of my wire placed in though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake this piece at 275 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes. We want to make sure that this picture gets thoroughly baked. Once it is completely baked though, you're going to come in with your needle nose pliers and your super glue. Super glue first. We're going to glue in that wire after it's been baked and thoroughly cooled, and glue in each of those little wires to your tree. Now, if this takes a little bit of, once you put in, and I'm using liquid super glue here. Once that super glue is in, let it sit for a little bit so that it can dry up thoroughly, and then come in with your pliers and start curling up your little green wires. Now, as I was taking the wire and curling it up, eventually, because this has been baked, the clay piece came away from the board. This is good. Now, if you need to force it away from the board, all you have to do is take your blade and slide it underneath, and it will, unattach, no problem. And this way, then you can work on it as much as you want and rebake it as many times as you need. So keep that in mind. Eventually, you're going to have to come in with super glue and a little bit of your E6000 to reattach. At this point, when I was looking at the picture, I thought, we are still missing more detail. We need more detail. So I came in here with a segmented petal cane of magenta to yellow and decided to go ahead and use this as my flower feature in the front foreground. So I cut off a couple of these pieces, and as I'm doing so, I'm going to take some of that green wire that I've cut off, that 22 gauge, and we're going to take one petal, and we're going to take one piece of that green wire. I'm going to take a little bit of super glue, make a little dot on one end, and then place on one of the petals. Now, I know the super glue doesn't work great all the time, but in this case, it works fantastic. When it comes to anything where it's not clay on clay, wire or otherwise, I go to my epoxy glues, and my super glue works great here because I just need a small, tiny little dot. And this is just to anchor it onto the wire enough that you can start adding on petal after petal after petal to create your flower. Because once you have the first petal down, then the rest of the petals will stick on naturally because of the clay and its natural stickiness. Now, once I have these petals on there, I decide to make a few more of these flowers. I also add in my little black dot and my knitting needle to make that little rhinestone go in if I wish. Once I make a number of these flowers, I make another little version of one petal with a little tiny cone center that will be also then framed with 2 leaves on either side. I will make a few of these. In fact, I'll make 4 of the ones with the cone, and then I'll have 3 with the center dot. And then I'll bake these things thoroughly in my oven 10 to 15 minutes. And then once those are baked, then we're going to come in and we're going to start placing them into our picture piece itself. So I'll take and make, sometimes if I don't have the hole drilled or whatever, sometimes my needle tool will make a nice hole into the rock area, or you could find a nice crevice to start placing down your flowers into your picture piece. Once you get the flowers placed in, or once you start figuring out where you want them to go ahead and make sure that you cut off any extra wire and then glue them into place. Once you glue them into place, you're going to take another little bit of green and you're going to make some little tiny cones and place those right around where the flowers are themselves. Again, once you have this done, you're going to rebake the entire piece or the picture piece at 275 degrees for about 7 to 10 minutes. Here the picture has been thoroughly baked again, and that was our last baking. I'm going to come in with some of my pointed back rhinestones. I'm going to place in a few of the rhinestones right into the flowers, and then we'll bring in the little flags that I've got there. We'll place those or glue them into the little castle and place little rhinestones in them as well. The piece has been thoroughly baked and glued in, and so now it's time to reattach it to the board. So I bring in a little bit of my super glue, I add that in, but I eventually come in also with my E6000 and place a little bit of that down as well. And I place it right back in between where my little pencil lines are that are still marked on the board. Once I have it placed in though, I let that set, and then you're going to erase off your lines either with a little bit of Comet or some kind of eraser. That will work too, to get the lines off of your white backboard. All right, so at this point I was thoroughly happy with my piece. I really liked it, but to me there was also a bit of me that said, you're not done. You need more detail. And I'm like going, okay, fine. And this to me made the whole thing pop. Again, it's that contrast thing. And sometimes my clay always doesn't come through. And for the leaves, this was especially so because they were pretty dark. You got that dark sky kind of going on at the top, right? So I brought in my green flash and I start painting in half of each leaf, right? And that really made a difference. Oh my gosh. It really called attention to it, but I wasn't quite finished because I thought, yeah, I like that. Let's go ahead and do the whole thing with that light, that light green. I love it. But I wanted to add in a little bit more, right? So again, guys, yeah, what do you think I'm going to go to? My paintbrush? No, the Posca. That's right. Hail the Posca, right? I was even thinking about the silver, but I'm bringing in the white here, and I thought, let's go ahead and do that little dot pattern that I love so much, right? And put it on the dark green part of the leaf. This way then you see the whole leaf and not just half of it. And it really made the difference. It also gave me the extra added detail that I needed so badly, because the more I looked at this tree, I loved the tree, but I was like, that detail really is so important to draw attention to some of it and not just the castle in the background. And so doing up the leaves on the tree, I decided, guess what? I need to go down and I need to do the flowers as well as the little green grass or leaves that come off of the flowers too. So I brought in the light green, I brought in the white Posca, made the dot patterns in the flowers, even did the stamens on the one petaled flowers where it was just like a line and a dot. Worked great, right? And then I thought, let's bring in a little bit of that silver Posca that I'd shown earlier, and I'm going to highlight just a little bit of the rock area. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and one last time let you guys watch my hands talk as I finish up my castle on the hill. All right, so this is the end result of creating my castle on the hill. The left side version is the one without the painted details, and the right side shows the painted details with it. Please use this for study and reference, and if you like this video, please like, subscribe, and hit that like bell. And leave me a comment. I'm always wondering what you're thinking. Otherwise, I am sending out my biggest hugs to each of you, and I hope you have a fantastic day.